Thank you for joining us today on EarthFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Close to 100 countries, including nearly 40 heads of state and government, have announced their commitment to finalizing or set out their commitment to implementing their new climate targets ahead of COP30 in Brazil this November. The announcement came out at a climate summit convened by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and President Lula da Silva of Brazil on the margins of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. For the first time, several major economies, including China, the world's largest emitter, as well as Nigeria, announced economy-wide emissions reduction targets covering all greenhouse gases and all sectors. I'll bring details on today's episode of EarthFile. Do stay with us.
Described as the game-changing summit, the high-level event was convened by the United Nations Secretary General alongside President Lula da Silva of Brazil as a platform for leaders to present their new nationally determined contributions on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Excellencies, we will start with a scientific assessment of the current efforts to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement.
At the outset, leading climate scientists provided a stark assessment of global efforts so far to honor the Paris Agreement, the landmark 2015 treaty that seeks to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. 10 years on, greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming continue to rise. An annual global temperature change exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time last year.
We also know that cutting emissions won't be enough. We need to massively scale up carbon dioxide removal. For every 0.1 degrees Celsius of planetary cooling, 200 billion tons are needed to be removed from the atmosphere. But even if this succeeds, we fail, unless we safeguard the world's most powerful carbon sink and planetary cooling system, a healthy planet. If we don't return to the safe operating space of the 9 planetary boundaries that regulates Earth's stability, including biodiversity, pollutants, land, nutrients, and the ocean, a safe climate future is out of reach, irrespective of our mitigation efforts. Don't be fooled. We are currently following a path that will take us to 3 degrees Celsius in just 75 years, shorter than the existence of this very institution. An existential threat we have not experienced in the last 3 million years. And there's no guarantee that efforts to cool the planet will succeed.
Yet we are told it is still possible to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. And the two experts highlighted solutions including transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy sources and transforming food systems to eliminate waste.
To act, we need to know 2 more things. We need to know that we are not alone. Others care, and we need to know that there is hope. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is knowing that if we act, it will make a difference. And that is exactly what the science says. Every action matters. When it comes to climate solutions, there's no one action that will fix it all. But there are so many that together give us more than enough to meet our climate goals. Transitioning from the dirty fossil fuels of the past to the clean energy of the future, protecting and restoring ecosystems that absorb carbon and shelter us from flood and heat, transforming food systems to reduce waste and emissions, investing in resilience so the most vulnerable communities benefit most. We cannot prevent this catastrophe alone, but together we can by setting stronger targets, by moving faster timelines, and by making deeper commitments. Why? Because the science tells us that every bit of warming matters, every year matters, every choice matters, not to the planet will endure. It matters to us.
This year's summit brought together leaders from government, business, and civil society around thematic solutions dialogues to put forward ideas to drive action across mitigation, adaptation, finance, information integrity, and other critical areas in line with the Paris Agreement and COP30 priorities. Under the Paris Agreement, governments are required to submit climate plans called the Nationally Determined Contributions, laying out bold action for the next decade. The treaty has made a difference, the Secretary General said, as projected global temperature rise dropped from 4 degrees Celsius to less than 3 degrees over the past 10 years if current plans are fully implemented.
Now we need new plans for 2035 that go much further and much faster, delivering dramatic emissions cuts aligned with 1.5 degrees, covering all emissions and sectors, and accelerating a just energy transition globally. Your new plans can take us a significant step forward. A UN report will calculate their impact for global emissions. If they fall short, we must create the conditions for a decade of acceleration. We know it can be done. China met its 2030 wind and solar target 6 years ahead of schedule. India reached 50% electricity capacity from non-fossil fuels 5 years early. We are in the dawn of a new energy era. We must seize this moment of opportunity.
By COP30, all parties to the Paris Agreement must submit new nationally determined contributions, known as the NDCs, that reflect bold action for the next decade. These updated plans are a chance to unlock the benefits of a just, resilient, low-carbon future, experts say.
Excellencies, dear friends.
In his words, the Secretary General said it is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by century's end.
Clean energy is powering jobs, growth and sustainable development, generating the fastest and cheapest electricity, insulating economies from volatile fossil fuel markets, providing energy security and sovereignty, and helping to deliver clean and affordable energy for all. Despite vast fossil fuel subsidies distorting markets, clean energy received double the investment of fossil fuels last year. The bottom line, clean is competitive and climate action is imperative.
The Secretary General noted that fossil fuels still dominate.
We must supercharge the clean energy transition, investing in grids and storage to unlock the full potential of renewables, lowering capital costs for developing countries, and redirecting fossil fuel subsidies to a just transition. Second, methane, a potent global heating gas. Drastic cuts this decade are essential, and most can be achieved quickly and cheaply. The International Energy Agency estimates fossil fuel operations could cut 40% of methane emissions today with no net costs. Third, forests. We must end the destruction of nature's greatest carbon sinks. This could deliver a fifth of needed emissions reductions by 2030. Fourth, heavy industry. We have seen important advances in technologies to cut emissions from steel and cement and heavy transport.
On climate justice, Mr. Guterres said that requires reforming the international financial architecture to strengthen developing countries' participation.
Climate disasters are inflicting damages that exceed the GDP of some small islands. Droughts and floods are taking lives, fueling anger and inflaming conflict, all while finance gaps prevent investments in adaptation and resilience. We need urgent action to unlock funds for developing countries, to seize clean energy benefits and protect lives and economies. And that requires reforming the international financial architecture to strengthen developing countries' participation. We need effective debt relief and scaled-up solutions like debt swaps and disaster pause clauses. We need a major increase in the lending capacity of multilateral development banks and significant contributions to the Loss and Damage Fund, including from innovative sources, and a major boost in adaptation finance, with developing countries meeting their pledge to double funding this year.
For his part, Brazilian president said the energy transition opens the door to productive and technological transformation comparable to the Industrial Revolution.
O fatalismo é o pior inimigo da ação.
Fatalism is the worst enemy of action. The energy transition opens the door to a productive and technological transformation comparable to the Industrial Revolution. Nationally determined contributions are the roadmap that will guide each country through this change. They are not mere numbers or percentages. They are an opportunity to rethink models and reorient policies and investments toward a new economic paradigm.
For this to happen on a global scale, President Lula said, while the nations need to bring forward their climate neutrality targets,
we have the chance to right injustices and build a prosperous and sustainable future for everyone. Thus, I call on the countries that have not yet submitted their NDCs. The success of COP30 in Belém depends on you. Let us make the Amazon the stage for a decisive moment in the history of multilateralism. I have said and have been saying that COP30, Mr. Secretary General, is the COP of truth. This COP is going to have to say whether or not we believe what science is showing us. If we, leaders, heads of states, if we trust or don't trust science, because we're going to have to make a decision, because if we do not make a decision, society is going to stop believing its leaders, and instead of strengthening the struggle against global warming, we are going to help discredit multilateralism, policies, and in democracy. And all of us will lose because denialism may actually win. Thus, the ball is in COP30's court, and I hope to rely on all of you and see all of you there. Thank you.
For its part, Brazil has committed to reducing all greenhouse gas emissions between 59% and 67%, covering all sectors of the economy. The president said Brazil will continue efforts to end deforestation by 2030.
Excellency Kashim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The vice president said that Nigeria aims to have 17 gigawatts of gas-fired power capacity by 2035, nearly doubling the current level. He also said the new climate plan signals a renewed commitment to Nigeria's goals under the Paris Agreement.
For the first time, health and action for climate empowerment have been included as priority sectors in our NDC 3.0, demonstrating our commitment to an economy-wide climate governance. On adaptation and resilience, we are scaling climate-smart agriculture to reach 5 million smallholder farms by 2030, increasing yields by 20 to 30%, and expanding drought-resistant crops. We are building resilient infrastructure, integrating early warning systems, climate-informed urban planning, and resilient housing to reduce climate-related damages by 50%. We plan to restore mangroves, forests, and wetlands to enhance carbon sinks by 200 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, cumulatively by 2030, while protecting biodiversity and livelihoods. Nigeria aims to lower the deforestation rate by 60%. And to deliver on these commitments, Nigeria is mobilizing $20 to $25 billion in climate finance by 2030, including green bonds, blended finance, and public-private risk-sharing mechanisms. We aim to unlock at least $7 to $10 billion in grants and concessional finance from global partners while promoting technology transfer, regional energy integration, and green entrepreneurship to drive inclusive growth.
Around 100 parties to the Paris Agreement, representing 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions, have now either submitted or unveiled new nationally determined contributions targets, setting out their commitment to accelerate climate action. China, the world's largest emitter, announced economy-wide emissions reduction targets covering all greenhouse gases and all sectors. The Chinese president announced via a video link that his country will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 7% to 10% by 2035. He also mentioned China will expand the installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 6 times the 2030 levels, striving to bring the total to 3,600 gigawatts. He also said the country will make new energy vehicles the mainstream in the sales of new vehicles, expand the national carbon emissions trading market to cover major high-emission sectors.
Global climate governance is entering a key stage. I wish to share with you 3 points. First, we must firm up confidence. Green and low-carbon transition is the trend of our time. While some country is acting against it, the international community should stay focused on the right direction, remain unwavering in confidence, unremitting in actions, and unrelenting in intensity, and push for formulation and delivery on NDCs, with a view to providing more positive energy to the cooperation on global climate governance. Second, we must live up to responsibilities. In the course of global green transition, fairness and equity should be upheld, and the right to development of developing countries fully respected. The transition should serve to narrow rather than widen the North-South gap. Countries need to honor the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, whereby developed countries should take the lead in fulfilling emission reduction obligations and provide more financial and technological support to developing countries. Third, we must deepen cooperation. The world now faces a huge demand for green development. It is important that countries strengthen international coordination in green technologies and industries to address the shortfall in green production capacity and ensure free flow of quality green products globally.
Developing countries, meanwhile, underscored the importance of incorporating adaptation, resilience, and loss and damage measures within their NDCs, stressing the urgent need for scaled-up financing to meet and surpass their ambitions.
At COP28 in Dubai, building on the Africa Nairobi Declaration, we launched the Global Solidarities Levies Task Force. A first breakthrough came this June when 8 countries, including Kenya, formed a coalition to introduce solidarity levies on premium class flyers. These initiatives must inform the Baku to Belém roadmap to mobilize the 1.3 trillion that developing countries urgently need. Africa is already stepping up. At this year's Africa Climate Summit, 8 leading African financial institutions signed a cooperation framework to unlock US $100 billion in investment capital. At the same time, when the world risks fragmentation and a retreat into transactional politics, Africa is leaning forward to shape its own destiny. We now invite the global community to join us to stand with us in this noble undertaking. This is the moment to be bolder, to show genuine climate solidarity, and to silence the naysayers.
Other nations detailed ambitious renewable energy goals, plans to curb methane emissions, strategies to safeguard forests, and measures to phase out fossil fuels.
Happy to announce that last week, Member States agreed that our national determined contribution would range between 66% and 72%. So, work is advancing, and we will formally submit our NDC ahead of COP30. But in parallel, we are also looking ahead. We're working on a 2040 target of a proposed 90% emission reduction. That is our way to climate neutrality by 2050. And my message is that the world can count on the European Union's continued climate leadership.
France, since 2017, has been complying with its carbon budget, and we're living up to our obligations. We're going to continue doing that. You can count on our economy, you can count on our country. My second takeaway is that we must also rise to the occasion at the end of 2025. We know that there are going to be a number of objectives which we must meet at the COP30 in Belém, and it's very important. And I'd like to express our support to President Lula, all of the negotiators. You have our support. Let's keep it simple. Europeans will be there in Belém living up to expectations, and France will be defending that meeting. We'll be going down our 2050 carbon neutral climate path. We'll be submitting our nationally determined contribution, our NDCs, underpinned by science, bringing together private and public investment in accordance with the trajectory we've set. And on that note, France supports the establishment of interstate carbon credits, which will be a way of going further, as well as other mechanisms which will allow us to assist our industries as they undergo this transition, making them able to get there. That's what we'll be submitting before the end of the year, by November in Belém at the COP30.
At the closing of the summit, the United Nations Deputy Secretary General said over 100 countries have come to announce or reiterate their new climate targets or their intent to bring them forward to COP30.
This sends a message of unity, hope and optimism that climate remains a priority, and with commitments from governments, businesses and finance to act.
Leaders emphasized that accelerating the energy transition can unlock jobs, growth and energy security.
Leaders across the world have stood together to show that even at a moment of division and uncertainty, the resolve and determination to fight the climate crisis is alive and strong. Ahead of COP30, every country that has not yet finalized its new NDC must try to do so without any further delay. We had close to 100 parties representing more than 66% of global emissions that have now submitted or made announcements of their new NDC targets. And that's quite amazing. We now know there's a momentum as we go to COP. We are seeing a clear collective response to the first global stocktake of the Paris Agreement, with countries bringing forward economy-wide targets covering all sectors and greenhouse gases, many for the first time, including China, Barbados, Nepal, Nigeria and Singapore.
While these pledges mark progress, leaders acknowledged that ambition gaps remain to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius in reach and deliver on finance and adaptation.
So we have the solutions, tools and technologies to transform and decarbonize our energy systems, transport and industry, as well as to protect people, restore our forests and other natural capital. What we lack is the speed, scale, and that must be changed now. Excellencies, the next decade will be decisive. Turning the global economy off fossil fuels and onto renewables is a Herculean task, but it is one that is entirely possible.
That's our show for today. Do join us next week. For your comments and questions, do write to edfile@channelstv.com. You can also watch this episode and other episodes of the program by going to our YouTube channel. Do click the playlist menu and then click as far. From all of us here in Lagos, it's bye for now.